What's going on, guys? I want to fire up the camera and show you this week's shop project, or at least the results thereof. I mentioned in my last shop update video that I was planning on making a custom flat platen for my 2x72 grinder. I wanted to make one that was half the width of my standard 2-inch wide platen, so a 1-inch wide. And that will allow me to take any of my 2x72 belts using a belt splitter. I can split them down the middle into two 1x72, and this is going to be mainly used for the most part for certain sharpening applications. There's a lot of times, depending on the type and style of blade or grind, or even the size of the blade, where I've often thought, a 1-inch belt and a 1-inch platen would really come in handy here. And even for other applications besides, getting into smaller areas and things like that. So I did end up making one. That's this guy right here. Pretty much the same setup and configuration as this guy. You got a couple of mounting bolts. I like to use carriage bolts that actually turn the top of the dome off. That helps with clearance, if I'm tilting this. And I'm also using a work rest or some other accessory. I've got this lower tool arm in place. Well, when I go to pivot this, I've found in the past that, even a carriage bolt head can kind of rub in there and get in the way. So I do turn off a little more than half of that dome with my lathe. And it turns it more into like an elevator bolt, I suppose, but it just gives some additional clearance and still gives you all the mounting strength of a carriage bolt. I got a couple angle brackets here, that are sized based on my platen frame and where I wanted to center these on the wheel. They're just bolted to this platen backer with some 1/4-20 hex bolts. And then for the platen backer, I've just got some aluminum bar stock. I milled to 1-inch wide, about 8.5 inches long, and then I milled out about an 8-inch pocket so that I have a little ledge here for this glass to rest on. Just in case this adhesive that I use were to ever fail or soften up, without this ledge, with that pressure of that belt, kind of pulling in and down on this and heating this up, this would likely eventually slide down and slip off. It could even get in between the belt and the wheel and explode on me. I really don't want that to happen, so I do mill a little ledge, by milling a pocket into that flat bar there. And that has worked great for several different platen setups I've had over the years. I've never even come close to a failure. And this is just using, standard exterior grade double-sided carpet tape I get from the big box store. It's a Duck brand. I've had the same roll for years. I've actually got a video on the channel, if you look back in the catalog, of how I install one of these, taping both sides and this and that. It's a very effective method. What's really nice is when this is ready to be changed, if it were to ever wear out, or more likely if I were to crack it or break it or drop it, if I have to change this, I just heat the back of this up with a heat gun or a torch, and then I could put a putty knife or a razor knife in between this, pry it off easily, clean it up, put the new one on. I'm ready to go in a matter of minutes, versus if I were to use something like an epoxy or a JB weld. A lot of guys end up having to chisel things off in pieces, and then you're like grinding the rest of it off, and it's just more of a mess. This works as good as, anything else I could ever imagine. So that's pretty much it for, the assembly here. Pretty well straightforward. Hardest part, I will say, or at least the most involved part, was going to be cutting this. This is a ceramic glass. It's called Robex. I'm going to give a little more detail on that in a moment. But I did have to get a wet tile saw and a specific glass cutting blade. It's very important in order to cut this cleanly into the dimensions that I needed it to. That actually worked out very well. And not including the cost of the saw and the blade, as far as making your own platen liners, once you get that saw, it's actually really economical, to kind of make your own. And I'll go in a little more detail about that in a moment, but let's go ahead and just install this, show you guys what it looks like on the machine. So this one comes off pretty easily, just a couple of thumb screws, same as the one we're putting on, or similar to. These knobs, the knobs on my 2-inch one, I actually made myself, or I had them water jet cut when I was cutting the frame on this. These, I just bought them from the big box store, $5 a piece. So I figured, yeah, what the heck, let's just use something off the shelf. And I actually like, they're a little bigger, they're a little bit easier to tighten, but just loosen these up enough to slide the bolts into the slots here. These carriage bolts are a little tighter than whatever brand I ended up using on my other platen, but it works out pretty well, and they'll probably break in. And then what I normally like to do, I take a straight edge, just make sure that I'm just a little proud of the front face of these wheels, so that I get a flat lay of my belt onto the platen. You can imagine if I were too far in, too far back, the belt would kind of bow in and won't really touch the platen at all when I was using it. So that's actually pretty good. I mean, this is just for, display purposes here right now. So now I got that set, I can tighten these up. And here's a kind of a J-Flex blue ceramic belt I've already split. And there you go, I'm ready to do some sharpening. I can still tilt this forwards and backwards. I can install a work table, work rest, or my sharpening rest accessory. So yeah, actually I used this for an hour or so, sharpening the blades that I showed in my last shop update. I had some small blades, folders, I had some really big fixed blades, sharpened every one of them flawlessly. Felt like I had a little bit more control, felt maybe like I was even getting a little bit more belt economy, since I'm not using just a portion of the 2-inch belt. I'm using maybe a little bit of a larger portion of just a 1-inch belt. So this is kind of like a 2-for-1, I'm getting out of this belt. Actually sharpened all the knives with just a single belt, sharpened up really nicely, felt like I had really good control. And, being narrower, I didn't feel like it took any longer either to sharpen even the larger blades than it would on a, 2-inch wide belt. Just taking my time. Really like how this guy turned out. I think it's going to be a very valuable asset kind of in my attachment collection here. I think I'm going to use it quite a bit. And as you can see, it's really no big deal, to install it, to take it out. Just loosen it up. Like I said, those carriage bolts are maybe a little tighter than they need to be. I could probably file those flats down just a little bit. But that's pretty much it there. My biggest concern is dropping the thing. I need to find like a little somewhere to kind of keep it safe. Maybe even like a little storage bracket or something. But yeah, kind of speaking of the platen liner, just as some FYI, I like to use ceramic glass. Actually, it's a specific brand of ceramic glass. I'm sure there's a number of them out there. I like one, it's called Robax, R-O-B-A-X. I've been using it for years. I could say I've bought ceramic glass platen liners from some suppliers in the past. I'm not going to name any names or anything like that, but I don't know what kind they have or where they sourced it from. I can say that I felt like it wore out, not quickly, certainly not quickly. It took a long time to wear out, but it did start wearing and dishing. I feel like it wore out faster than this Robax. I've actually been using this platen liner here for a number of years. I can tell you the last couple times I've had to change this, it hasn't been because of wear, it's been because I hit it and chipped it or broke it, maybe dropped it and cracked it on the ground. This stuff lasts forever, figuratively speaking. In my opinion, it actually wears slower than even a hardened steel. I know there's a lot of guys, they like, hardened like D2 or A2, tool steel platens. I'm sure those are all well and good. I know carbide platens are becoming a little bit more commonplace, a little bit more accessible. I'm sure those are great. I've never actually used one. I think they're a little bit cost prohibitive. But I would say dollar for dollar, and as far as how easy these are, in my opinion, to install, I really don't think there are better options out there than the ceramic glass platen liner. Again, it wears extremely slowly. The most you have to do, and you have to do this with any platen, but with certain belts, it'll leave a little bit of a carbon deposit from the back of the belt. Get yourself a scraper. You can scrape it off, a little bit of degreaser, glass cleaner, brake cleaner. You can kind of clean the rest of it off. I'm looking down this platen right now that I've ground for hours and hours, anything and everything, high pressure, low pressure, all kinds of different belts. I don't see any noticeable wear on this. No gouges, no dishes, scratches, anything like that. This stuff lasts a really long time. And for the money, you're talking like, like a buck or two a year. Now, granted, I'm not a full-time knife maker. Maybe guys that are grinding 8, 10, 12 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week, they might have a different experience. But I really don't see too many other materials lasting or holding up as well as this. It's got a really low coefficient of friction, which means it doesn't heat up quite as much or as readily as a steel platen would. And so you don't really need, platen chillers or anything like that. Not that it would hurt anything to put one of those on, but I haven't found the need to it. I've actually gotten these where maybe I had this pulled out a little too far. And the belt was really rubbing hard against it. I've had the back of these, with heavy grinding, get so hot that I didn't want to put my hand on it for more than a couple seconds. Still no issues, especially with that little ledge down here. This has never wanted to come off or come loose, and it's still nice and strong. I think it's a great option. Now, speaking of making your own, I know there's a handful of suppliers out there, knife making suppliers. There's maybe some Etsy shops. Used to be a couple eBay stores. Some of those have come and gone, where you could buy, various widths and lengths of these ceramic glass platens. Prices are all over the place. I had one supplier, they would cut whatever width or length you wanted. They charged by the square inch. They were incredibly reasonable. I think I was paying like $15 to $20 per platen. It was great. It's like a fraction of the cost of what some of these other suppliers were charging. And they always did a really good job, with the cuts. They were nice and square and even and straight, parallel. Well, I can't find that seller anymore. They either retired or, maybe they ran through their supply of Robacks. I don't know. They're not there anymore. So, unfortunately, I can't really send anybody their way. But I did recently find a supplier on eBay that were selling these guys. They're about like an 8 or so inch by 9 inch piece of Robacks, which is often used for like fireplace doors, furnace windows, that sort of thing. Here's a sticker that comes on them. It's made by a company called Schott, S-C-H-O-T-T. Roback ceramic glass. I can tell you I paid about $20 for this, or I bought 2 of them. I think with shipping it was like $45, $46. And there's enough material here that I could theoretically get probably at least 3, comfortably I could get 3 2-inch wide by 9-inch platens out of this, or even more if I go the other direction. So for less than $50 I could easily have say 6 platens with even some left over for like another 1-inch platen. I think that's about as reasonable as it gets. Granted, you got to do your own cutting. It's a little bit of your own labor, and you got to have the tool cost. I'll show you guys what I bought to cut the glass. I got this guy off of Amazon, which you saw is over there. It's kind of in a pile, but it's just a Skill Model 3540 tile saw, 7-inch saw. They're normally about $100. I got it for $75 on Black Friday. The saw that comes with it, I'd throw it out. But the saw I ended up working with, that works really well, night and day difference. I got a Hercules glass and mosaic tile cutting saw from Harbor Freight. 58224, I think is the part number on there. $32, give or take. and it cut a really clean, really smooth cut, nice and square. I will say the one thing on that skill saw, the guide fence is a little finicky. It's kind of a pain to get adjusted perfectly parallel and straight because of there's adjustment screws on both ends to tighten it up and clamp it onto the table. I don't really like that. I could do without that. You might want to spend maybe a little bit more, another $100, get one with a good cam lock, sliding table guide, similar to like a table saw would have. If you're going to cut a lot of these, it might be worth a little bit of extra investment on the saw, or maybe find something used, Craigslist, eBay, Facebook, that sort of thing. And you might have a little easier time, setting up and cutting these. But I was able to make it work. Another thing I did, actually I've got it right here. I got this from Harbor Freight as well. It's a 4-sided diamond hone. I think it was like $15. They often go on sale for even less than that. This is really useful for, smoothing out those sharp corners. You will have a very sharp corner. It will cut you. You do want to kind of knock those corners and edges off and just kind of smooth everything over. I also like to kind of round over and taper the leading edge and the trailing edge so the belt has a little smoother transition as it's coming around this. Really quick and easy to do with a diamond hone. You could use silica carbide paper. I've heard of guys using cork belts with polishing compound, diamond paste, that sort of stuff. Works really well. I've even used ceramic belts, though it wears out the belt and it is, does take a little bit longer, but it works. But this diamond, any kind of diamond honed, diamond pad, diapads, polishing pads, those work really well. Just to lightly, knock those corners down where you're not going to catch any little micro fractures or cut yourself. And this actually worked really well. Total investment, the saw, like I said, $75. The blade was, $32, maybe $35 with tax. So what do we have, like $110 there. Again, I paid $45 for 2 full sheets of glass. For $160, I could potentially have had, 6, 7, 8 different platens. What is that, $20 a piece? I mean, the saw practically pays for itself, if I were to buy that many from a supplier. One idea, I'll throw this out there for you guys, maybe buy a good saw, buy a few sheets of that Robax, find a good supplier for, a good price per square foot, cut, 10 or 20 of these platens in like a standard size or, sizes people need. Sell them and make your money back. The saw will pay for itself, and then you got yourself a little side business. Now, me personally, I'm not currently so much interested in doing that. So nobody, start messaging me saying, hey, can you cut me one real quick? I see you got some left. I'm not really getting into all that. But somebody else, you're more than welcome to it. Like I said, a lot of these sellers, they've kind of come and gone over the years for whatever reason. I don't know what that is. And, prices being what they are, they're kind of all over the place. A lot of guys are out of stock, I've noticed. Certain knife making supplies seem like they're out of stock pretty regularly. So, see if you can fill the gap maybe. But at any rate, that's pretty much it for the new attachment, guys. As well as, kind of a good little setup if you want to cut your own platen liners. Like I said, I think dollar for dollar, or even the day for day, that you're going to get lifetime longevity out of those. I really don't think there's any better options out there. Not for the money anyway. Maybe carbide is a good option. I can't really speak to that, but, that's one that's still pretty cost prohibitive. So you guys can kind of use your judgment on that. But, if anything, hopefully this gives some of you guys some ideas of a handy little attachment for your own. There's actually other little sharpening attachments and platens, I have in mind, where now that I have a saw and some extra glass, I might make some of those and make some liners for them. So I think it'll be a good investment. Another great thing about those tile saws, you can cut G10 and other similar, harder glass-based or stone-based handle materials with them. So, something to keep in mind. But I don't know, hopefully you guys got something out of that. I know I certainly did. So thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.